Welcome to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly, and my guest panelist for today is Morgan St. James. Our guest for the show is Australian author Pat Ritter, and the topic of our show today is publishing for a worldwide audience. Before we get to introduce our guest, Pat, Morgan, Pat, and I are going to read a few fun facts, actually, about the world market. Morgan, I'm going to let you start.
Okay. Well, you're probably curious about what some of the top authors make, and you'll recognize most of these names. And don't we wish we had income like that?
Absolutely.
From June 2016 to June 2017. Are you ready for this? J.K. Rowling, $95 million. And these are U.S. dollars.
In a year. That's amazing.
Yeah. James Patterson, somewhat behind Rowling at $87 million.
Poor guy.
Yeah, but I don't think he'll be going on welfare anytime soon.
No, I don't think so.
Jeff Kinney, $21 million. And Dan Brown, of course, you're probably familiar with that name, $20 million. And Stephen King, the author who's rumored never to have a blank piece of paper in his house, $15 million.
All right. And I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give out some information for our listeners to go to. And Pat, I don't know if you had a chance to check it out or not, but there's a place you can go to called worldmeters.info. And what it is, it's a counter of all the new book titles published this year. And it's up to date. Literally, while you're sitting there watching it, it will change because it's constantly up to date.
Okay, so
and
it's dynamic.
Oh, yes. And as of before the show, there were over 2,332,000,000 new book titles published. And Pat, I'm going to let you take the next one.
Yeah, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
James, the British company Pearson is the largest publishing house in the world.
Yeah.
And I never knew that until I read this.
Yeah,
but anyway, thank you.
We're going to go over this in a few minutes, too. I think Morgan is.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to introduce Pat, and Pat Ritter is an Australian author. In fact, he's talking to us from Australia. He has published, as of the other day when I spoke to you, you've published 21 books, right, Pat?
21, yeah.
Yeah. He served as a police officer for 20 years in the Queensland's police service. 15 years of that was as a detective. Pat established Crime Stoppers for the Queensland Police, and after retirement, he worked as an alcohol and drug counselor for Queensland Health. Pat retired when his wife of 31 years passed away from cancer in 2003. He is a recovering alcoholic, and the last time he had alcohol that passed his lips was on January 13th, 1977. Pat has been writing and publishing since 1988, and in 2009 he decided to publish his books in ebook format. And I think it's important to state to our authors why we mentioned Pat's past, because what I want the people who are listening to the show to understand is it doesn't matter what our backgrounds are or who we are. If you have something in there to write, go out there and write it. There's nothing wrong with making an attempt anyway. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that because sometimes those very backgrounds are what make the writing compelling.
Yes.
Because you're not creating it from something that you've learned academically. You've lived it, and the emotion is there, and the readers know it.
Yeah.
Pat, that's quite a background. I'm wondering, what else can you tell us about your past and present, and how and why did you decide to become a writer?
Morgan, it all started when I was 14, believe it or not. I was in sub-junior at Sandgate High School, and my English teacher, Mr. Imhoff, we wrote compositions in those days, and I didn't write a composition. I wrote whatever came to from my head. Anyway, he came up to me and said, "You've got a gift for writing. You write the way you speak, which is unique." And I never had any idea what he was talking about. No, it went straight over my head. But believe it or not, that was the start. And I never realised it at 14. Of course, you don't know anything at that time. But 20 years later, I went to college, and I started to learn business. And I was in the police force at the time, and what happened was a lecturer I had, Bob O'Sullivan, we were doing a subject called behaviour, and I wanted to learn more about teenagers running away from home. That was my main interest. And of course, the big problem was there's so many predators out there that they were in danger. So I found out through his studies of behaviour that I had to teach parents how to communicate with their own kids, and that once I got the breakthrough on that, he said write an assignment, which we had 3,000 words to write on what you do. So I wrote this assignment of 3,000 words, and he come back to me and he said exactly the same words to me as what Mr. Imhoff had said 20 years before.
Wow.
And I thought, hello, what's going on here? Sort of twice in my life. And then what had happened was he said, you love this subject. I said, oh, yeah. I said, it's helping so many families. And he said, we'll write a book. I said, oh, you got to be kidding. So 3 years we did the research, and I wrote the case studies and he wrote the technical things, and we dovetailed the two together. And we wrote a book called Closing the Gap. And believe it or not, it become a bestseller.
Oh, wow.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I travelled all over Australia promoting it, and just amazing it was, for that to come true, that type of event. And anyway, so I had a pacemaker then when I was 42.
Ooh,
so
that's
I had to
young.
retire. Yeah, I just established Crime Stoppers in the police, and I'd be ready to go to commission officer rank, and then I got a pacemaker and I had to retire from the police on medical grounds. So I was sort of at a loss. But the thing was, I couldn't find anything on people who had pacemakers. And because, you're in the middle of your life, as we'll say.
Sure.
So I sat down to write the book, How Could This Happen to Me? And it went off too. Yeah, sorry, James, what was that?
No. No, that's great.
No.
Anyway, so once I got that going, I couldn't find a publisher, so I self-published it. And I just went to, I was sort of door knocking and did everything what I used to do with the other book. And then, anyway, it became, I got out of the police, and then I became an alcohol and drug counsellor, which is right at the other end of the spectrum to being a police officer.
Yeah.
And because I'm an alcoholic, I wanted to learn what happened that caused me to be an alcoholic. So through working in the alcohol and drug area, I had a lot of studies from a friend, from a American friend, and he put these tapes out, and I buy the tapes and watch them. And then eventually I found out that it was a learned behaviour that I learned very young in life. And I sort of, it sort of carried me through till I was 28, where I stopped having a drink on the 13th of January, 77. But it wasn't the fact of stopping drinking, it was the fact that it took 20 years from there to change that messages in my brain and get on the new train and all that sort of stuff.
Pat,
once that happened, yeah, sorry.
I was just going to ask you, did anyone ever say that some of the drawbacks to being a police officer could have attributed to your alcoholism? And the reason I say that is I did some studying yesterday on this, and in America, 11% of the male police officers and 16% of the female police officers have have alcoholic addiction.
That's a high percentage.
And there's some that even say as much as 25% of.
Yeah, I wouldn't. James, I wouldn't blame it on the police. The thing was, I'd had a drinking issue. See, my father's an alcoholic.
Okay.
And the big problem is I grew up in this alcoholic type of family, which in the 50s, like there wasn't anybody around that didn't drink or smoke or all that stuff.
Sure.
Right. That was typical.
So it was sort of a,
in fact, when you mentioned smoking and learned behavior, my father was a 4-pack-a-day smoker, and when I hit 4 packs a day at 22 years old, I panicked, and it's hard to beat an addiction. And I know I quit cold turkey. I've never had another cigarette after that last 4th cigarette in the pack.
Well, I'd been married 5 years, a couple of children, and I come home the night before, quite drunk and everything, and my wife said, well, if you come home drunk tonight, we're leaving. So I didn't know what the problem was.
Oh, wow.
Well, that was your normal because of your father.
Yeah, that was my normal behaviour,
Yeah.
But what I learned through study that was a tolerance I'd built up and a dependency. Anyway, at 28, because she said she was going to leave, and I promised her there on that morning that I'd never drink again, and I haven't drank since.
That's
But
amazing.
that was the point of stopping drinking. It wasn't changing, you know.
You did the same thing I did, cold turkey.
Yeah, cold turkey. Yeah. Never drank.
I don't know.
since.
Do they use that expression in Australia?
Yeah, cold turkey.
Okay.
Yeah, cold turkey. But it was funny, when I went to work that morning, I told the people I worked with, I said, I'm never drinking again. And they said, oh, thank God for that.
Yeah. But you turned
I
that
must
into
have been a pretty bad
a
drunk.
positive, though, by writing about it. You
Yeah.
know, by taking your
that came about after my wife passed away. Because I live on a property in the middle of nowhere, my wife wanted to be cremated and built and put in a garden out the front of the home, new home we built. Anyway, after 3 or 4 months, I just couldn't get on with life, you know. It was so hard. And one morning I'm sitting on the front veranda having a coffee, and I heard her voice say to me, you dragged me up here to write. Now you're sitting on your bum doing nothing. Get up and write.
Oh, that's cool.
I got up and like, confessions of an alcoholic in 2 weeks. Wrote the whole lot, the whole book.
Yeah.
Wow.
So you can do it. There's no drama with it.
Yeah. Pat, do you have a website?
I do. It's Pat Ritter, www.patritter.com.au.
Okay. And while we're talking about it, where can people buy your books?
They
Can they buy them in the U.S.?
Yes.
Yeah, they can buy them as ebooks through Smashwords. They click onto the website and they're directly to Smashwords, or they can go to Amazon and buy them through Amazon.
Okay,
And
great.
what I've been doing recently with my later books is converting them into paperbacks.
Uh-huh.
So they can buy them as paperbacks also.
Great.
Yeah, and Pat, I'm going to give you another idea of where you can list your book to a worldwide market, and you'll get a larger, with this company I'm going to tell you about, you'll get a larger royalty, and that's through Draft, the number 2 digital, draft2digital.com.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, they only take a 10% commission. That's it, and they help you with the formatting and everything.
Yeah.
And not only that, but with Draft to Digital, you can download a .mobi file for Kindle with their formatting on it, and you can download. You can download an EPUB for all the others, and they also have one universal link for your book, where if you click on that link, it'll bring up every platform that you can buy the digital book on.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So
that's Draft.
What was that one?
Draft.
And I'll get it off you later.
Yeah, Draft, and then the number 2, not spelled out, just the number 2, digital.
Yeah.
Draft2digital.com.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Oh, but it's amazing what we do now. Like in the early days, you had the cost of everything and the great facts around and bookshops and.
Now,
I sit here in the middle. We're over the other side of the world, and we're talking together as if we're sitting beside one another.
Yeah, what's interesting is it's tomorrow where he is, by the way.
Yes, I know.
It's the very next day.
I know, because I have a son in Australia, and I always have to consult my world clock if I want to call him, so I don't call him in the middle of the night, you know?
Yeah. All right, so, Pat, I'm going to ask Morgan. Morgan's our panelist today, and we want, our audience is going to want to know a little bit about her. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
How long have you got?
I have to ring your website.
I'm going to give you a real quick, condensed version.
All right.
I've done a lot of things in my life. I've had a lot of careers, and I was an interior designer for 20 years, and because of the interior design is the way I became a writer. I didn't have aspirations of being a writer when I was young, but when we were approached by a very prestigious design magazine to do an article, I found I really not only liked writing, but I had a flair for it. And there's a whole long story with that I won't go into. But the bottom line was they wanted me to do more articles for them. So I started writing articles for Designers West magazine, and then I wrote some newspaper articles. And in about 1995, my sister and I first collaborated on our first book in the Silver Sisters Mystery Series. So as a writer, I've written a lot of freestanding ones on my own. I'm working now on a series that's a combination of some books by me, some with a collaborator. And what else can I say? I live in Las Vegas with my beautiful dog, Dylan.
And what is your latest book? I'm going to ask Pat in a minute. So what's your
Well,
latest
my
book?
very, very latest book is Payback, which will be coming out in the next day or two. And it's part of this new series that I mentioned. It's a fun kind of crime caper series. And the name of the series is Revenge is Fun. And before that, my most recent book was Incest, Murder, and a Miracle. And that one has just done phenomenal. And the people who are the subjects in the book, it's a true story, and the three of us collaborated. Rob Cuccio, Cheryl Cuccio, and myself. We worked as co-authors to put this book together. They've been on multiple TV shows now, and I'm proud to say the book is under option to Sony at this moment.
Oh, good.
Wonderful.
Well, now, Pat, you just finished your 21st book, but one of the books,
21st.
yeah, and one of the books that you wrote was the Drover. And I know that was one we
Yeah.
talked about when I first was going to book you. That was the one we were going to talk about. And I want to let you know I did some research in it so that I know what a drover is now.
Okay.
For our American audience, a drover is basically a cowboy.
That's it.
So basically, you write westerns, but it's just called a drover. And why this is important is because we're going to get into, writing for the world market and how slang has to deal with that. But basically, a drover is a cowboy. And one of the things that I found out is that this term came to use basically in 1836 in Australia. Did you know that,
I didn't.
Pat?
Yeah, I thought of through research that I...
Yeah, it
I
was
picked
Joseph
that up.
Hawdon. He is the one he drove like 300 head of cattle from Murrumbidgee River to Melbourne, which is 300 miles
Yeah.
or 480 kilometers. And then again, and there was another guy named George Gregory who became famous for being, what did we say that is again? A drover in 1863. But the most famous one was William McDonald. In 1883, he drove, 700 head of cattle and 60 horses over 3,480 miles or 5,600 kilometers. That is a trip and a half. That's like going from one end of the United States to the other.
Yeah. The book
Sorry.
I wrote, The Drover, you've done very well, James.
Oh, thank you.
He's a
the
researcher.
Book of the Drover,
Yeah.
I wrote about my father-in-law, who was a drover. He was a drover all his life. And what happened was my wife and I went to the Birdsville races, which is right in the centre of Australia, one year, and we're going across the Thompson River, and she asked the bus driver to stop. And she said, look, Pat, she said, that's where Dad took those 500 head of bullocks across the flooded water of the Thompson River. And the dogs' noses were just sticking out of the water, and I'm only 9-year-old and all this sort of thing, see? And I must have put that in the back of my mind. It must have just been one of those little times that I locked another thing in. Anyway, I went through a series of writing personal stories or personal books of different people. And I received an Australian honour thing for it, and national award it was. Anyway, I decided to write this book about my wife's father, of his exploits, and particularly about taking these 500 head of bullocks across this flooded river. And because anyway, it's turned out to be very good because it's a story. It's an Australian story, and it's almost true. I put a couple of things in there that sort of just to get the story fictional, But what I like to write is historical fiction. And with this latest series that I've written, this last book, The Year That Never Was, I've been taking a segment of Australia, and particularly this time from the Boer War and the Federation of Australia, and putting fictional characters in with it to create a storyline.
Yeah.
And that's a series. So I started off with my grandmother, who used to tell me stories when I was growing up. And she'd tell me stories of her life in Callumalla, which is a town where both parents were born, their parents were born. So it was a sort of a starting point from our family heritage. And the stories she'd tell me, and I'd worked out there for a number of years, so I knew the area pretty well. So I just write the stories that pertain to that particular period. And this one I'm doing now is in 1903 when my grandmother was born. So yeah, it's sort of exciting, and it gives me plenty of material to work with.
Really?
And yeah.
Well,
And I love the Americans when they say, "What's a scone?" And I'll give them a recipe of what a scone is, or a damper, or
I
something
just had
like that.
one yesterday.
Did you?
We have scones here.
Because I put a lot of work. I put the word scone and strawberry jam and all that sort of stuff in it. And yeah, they get back to me and say, "Yeah, can you tell me what a scone is?" And so I do all that.
Do you ever use the word? Do you ever use the word crikey?
No, I'll leave that to Steve. Steve done all that. Poor bugger, he's gone now. But no, I don't use that. I use a lot of other Australian sayings, but only for the ones that I know of.
Uh-huh.
And that's it. But just getting back to the Drover, it's sort of everybody enjoys reading it because I get so much feedback from it.
mm-hmm.
And it's typical Australia. It's typical of what happened in those days,
Yeah.
And that's it.
I like the cover on that as well.
I've tended to keep me writing in that type of Western type of culture. If you like to.
Now, have you ever heard of Louis L'Amour?
Louis
L'Amour. He's an American author. He writes westerns, and to just tell you how popular, westerns are in the United States. My mother, by the way, read every one of his books. He's written over 100 novels, 250 short stories.
Wow.
Published in 10 languages. When he died, I think he died in like 1998, he had 105 existing works in print. He sold over 320 million copies of his books.
Wow.
To give you an idea. Now, what I find interesting about publishing when he started out, in the 1950s and 60s, most of the major publishers in the United States refused to publish more than 1 or 2 books a year. So he found a publisher called Gold Medal that supported 3 or 4 books a year. But he was smart because what he did is he signed with several publishers so he could put out multiple books a year. So finally, Bantam signed him on when he was doing quite well. He'd sold several million already, and they signed him on to a 3-book-a-year deal. So I can imagine how many he would have published if he wasn't limited.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder what he did with his 2 minutes of spare time every day.
I think he must have invented time or something. But yeah, westerns are quite popular here. Very popular.
James, you talk about droving. I'm reading a book at the moment, Robbery Under Arms, which is published in 1888 in Australia. And it was all about Captain Starlight. And he stole 1,200 head of cattle from mid-Queensland and took them all the way to Adelaide and sold them down there. But there was a bull in amongst them,
Uh-huh.
Anyway, it's quite an heroic, and it's interesting, and you do get involved in reading it because it's the way they've written it. It's the imagination that comes into it as you're reading it.
Yeah. That sounds like that would be fun. Well, we're going to get into the discussion part of this, and I'm going to start off with. I got all this information from the internet, and then here's just an example of writing internationally and how that works. And we're going to talk about the English language when it comes to America, Canada, Great Britain, and Australia. Britain and America, there are 2 nations divided by a common language. The dual influence of the British and American spelling on Canadian English can make life difficult for Canadian authors and for American and British authors writing for Canadian readers. Then there's the rest of the English-speaking market, like Australia. It is nearly impossible to write for everyone with all the various slangs, so just stick to what you know. And that's kind of what you did. You can still write for various audiences across the world, but you start getting in trouble when you start messing with the slangs and trying to accommodate everyone because you cannot accommodate everyone. So you have to maintain the thought process of where you are, and how you speak. But, even in America... go ahead, Pat.
if I put cowboys in my books as the Western,
Right.
as a Australian, they'd cut me throat. So,
Right.
so,
Right.
so I use the words ringers or drovers and all those type of things. You know. Stop another one, you know.
Yeah, and
But
sometimes
yeah,
the same word has
that,
totally different meanings in different languages
Yeah.
that are still English.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, whatever version you use, it's important to be consistent so that you don't look silly and confuse your readers. In other words, if you're starting out with one book and you're writing with your Australian slang, you don't want the next book to read with an American slang, because now you're going to be losing the readers who started reading in the first place. You know, you can just keep writing in the American English, or don't worry about the other countries that speak the same language and various spellings. And here's an example of how it can be different too, not just in the way we pronounce things or different words, just in spelling alone. Like in the British spelling of program is P-R-O-G-R-A-M-M-E, as opposed to the American spelling of P-R-O-G-R-A-M. And I had someone on my show, Stephen Murray, who wrote Chapel of Eternal Love. And there was a couple things when he first put his first book out, we noticed on the back cover, the spelling was different. Like in traveling was with two L's because in Great Britain, they use two L's. So, you got to be careful when you're trying to garner a certain audience. If you're writing for an English audience, you've got to make sure that everything is correct.
Well, I'll put this one to you. I wrote a book. The one I wrote last year was called Tilbury Station.
Okay.
And what I did every time I spelt the word mum, I put M-O-M, as in American mum.
Oh, yeah.
But Australian is M-U-M.
Right, so is British.
Anyway, I had one person say to me, I said, what do you think of the book? And they said, you spelt mum wrong. You put it in M-O-M instead of M-U-M.
So that's an example. That's a good example.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you change it?
No. I'd already published it. No, but I tell you one thing I do. Every day I'm on Facebook, and I have a group called Keeping Up in My Writing. I have 9,500 members across the world, but there's a lot from America. And I put a page a day of a book I've written, and particularly the latest book I'm put on, I put a page. And I get the response I get from the comments of that particular page. It's extraordinary, and I get people so involved in it. We sort of write another book on top of that book,
Go
ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Mark.
We're so polite.
Yes.
I'm going to steal your idea. I'm putting you on notice.
Well, that's a great way to have a readers group. But that's a huge readers group.
That's sort of what it. And it's funny. I have a cousin over in America. She's been there all her life, and Idella, and she'll say, "Is that your grandmother or my grandmother?" We're on. So we sort of have a discussion there on the comments.
Yeah. Margaret?
Well, all of this takes so much time: writing and editing and galley proofs and indexing and cover design, and this is just kind of for our listeners, but the logistics of getting a book published can be tough if you're sitting right across the room from each other. But what happens when you're across the world from each other? I mean, I've done a little bit of that because when my sister and I first started writing, we were 3,000 miles apart, me in L.A. and her in Alaska. And one of my other co-authors lives in New York. Actually, a couple of my other co-authors live in New York. So, you're coordinating times and things like that. But, it's amazing. Technology makes the world such a small place.
Yes. Absolutely.
And, between email and instant messaging and fax machines, which are kind of obsolete now, and social media and everything, it's like the work never stops. And, I was kidding around before when I said, what did Louis L'Amour do with his extra 2 minutes? People always used to ask me what I did with my extra 5 minutes. So I guess I wasn't as prolific as Louis L'Amour. But, social media is a blessing and it's a curse.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, it's such a great source of immediate feedback and inspiration. But on the other, it'll drive you to distraction if you can't divorce yourself from it periodically.
Yeah.
We have our computers, our cell phones, our tabs, all of these things. I mean, you could work 24 hours a day if you wanted to.
Yeah. I know, Pat, you're huge on social media.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very. I can't believe how they invented Facebook. It was a fabulous. You know, I went and saw the movie, and I've read the book, and I've studied. You know, and it's just fantastic. But to be like I say of a morning, I've got to have that page on the posting on Facebook by 7 o'clock every morning, because if I don't, there's messages come to me and say, "Where's the post for today?" or "Where's the page for today?" You know. So and it's funny. I'll walk in the main street of Imbil, which is the next door down, and there's a lady comes there, and she said, "I've got to get home and read your post." She said, "I've got to read it every day." You know.
Yeah.
And so this is the following that you get. And who would have thought? Like I started off with 2 people, and here's 9,500, and there's a lot of comments on it, and this is and you bump into people every now and then. They said, "Oh, I read your page," you know. All this.
Yeah, that's a great marketing tool.
Yeah. What's great is that he's sitting in the middle of nowhere. He's in
Right.
a country. You're in the country, and yet he has access to all these people all over the world.
Right.
That's the
Right.
phenomenal part. And by the way,
and you get responses.
we're
What I like, you
speaking.
get
We're
responses
speaking on
from-
Messenger through Facebook right now.
Yeah, and that's the incredible thing about it. It's fabulous, and you know, I can't get over it. And I do exactly the same thing on LinkedIn, but I don't put a page on LinkedIn. I just keep the. But I like giving free books away. I like the reader to have a look at one of the books I've written and get them to have a thought, you know, what goes into them and all that type of thing. I don't mind that at all, you know.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 1950s before, Pat.
Yeah.
You know, everything we do now would have been sci-fi back then. Who would have ever
absolutely.
imagined that we could do all this stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
We never, even in the 70s and the 80s, this is, you know, I was attached in the police in the computer branch. That's how I had the skills to set up established Crime Stoppers.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Word Perfect as a word processing package. We didn't have Microsoft in those days, but
Right.
you can imagine what's happened since then. And it's great. But I do everything myself. I sit and write the book on the computer, and then I edit it all, publish it all, do the lot, and market it, and do everything myself.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah. So I can't imagine the world
I
anymore.
make sure I have a goal to do it in 12 months. I do it from January to November.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine the world without something like social media now.
Yeah.
Oh, you couldn't. It'd be like the old dark days, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when it's funny when you're doing research. You know, people would go by ship from Australia to England and take 4 or 5 months, whereas now it takes 12 hours.
Right.
And an aeroplane, all this. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the publishing industry itself and how it varies across the world. And the U.S. has by far the largest publishing industry, which is kind of interesting because we already mentioned the largest publishing company is not even in the U.S. It's followed by China and then Germany. Revenue from the United States is projected to reach nearly $44 billion by 2020.
Where's mine?
You just want a little tiny fraction of that, right?
Just a little bit.
About 2.7 billion books were sold in the U.S. in 2015, a figure that has remained fairly consistent in the past few years. Of course, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child by J.K. Rowling was the best-selling print book in the United States in 2016, with nearly 4.13 million copies sold that year. Billion would be unbelievable. And, of course, I'm not surprised about The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins because that was made into a movie. And what we found is oftentimes when a book is taken and made into a movie, it generates a whole new series of readers, you know, who want the book to find, you know, what it was about. So that's good. Morgan, I'm going to let you take the next one.
Okay. Well, let's talk about ebooks a little bit. You know, those books that only a few years ago weren't even considered to be real books.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And wow, it's changed around, you know. They've gained pace in the book industry, and about 73% of the publishers and authors have published their books digitally. And that's in the United States in 2015. And nearly 80% stated that they were planning to publish ebooks in 2016. So we think, oh, well, are the ebooks going to take over the, print books?
Yeah, are they going to go anywhere?
Yeah, I mean, there are the naysayers that say, I will always read a print book, and then there are the ones who say, I'll never read a print book again. So here's the skinny on this. Despite the rising popularity of ebooks in the United States among publishers, forecasts actually show that the number of ebooks that readers are expected to read is actually going to drop a little bit in the coming years. And I have no idea why, but that's the forecast. You see, in 2015, get this figure, there were 92.64 million people reading ebooks in the country. By 2021, the figure that's projected is going to drop to 88.45 million. And there are so many devices now, too, that you can use to read ebooks. And in the U.S. and actually worldwide, I think, Amazon Kindle, I don't know about Barnes & Noble Nook. I'm guessing that might be international, and Kobo. And, Kindle has been really smart because they make the app free and you can download it to your phone or your tablet or your computer. So you don't even have to have a Kindle to read a Kindle book.
Right. So what about Barnes & Noble's Nook, Pat, in Australia? Do they have Nook there? I'm sure they probably do.
Say,
Barnes & Noble's Nook, do you know about that?
Yeah. I do all that through the Smashwords website, and they what they do, they're affiliates of Smashwords, and they transfer me books to those places like Barnes and all those.
Okay.
I think there's something like 31 affiliates, and that way it's quite strange to open your book in French and try and decipher what it all is, but it's quite. And Amazon does the same.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting then. So it doesn't matter what country you're in today.
No, you can buy them anywhere. Well, yeah, I mean, there was a time when you had to have the device in order to be able to read an ebook.
Yeah.
But now anybody, from a kid to a grandma or a grandpa, can just pick up their iPhone or pick up their, Samsung or whatever it is, and boom, they've got so many books at their fingertips.
That's why I'm curious as to why they're thinking that the market's going to shift.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't see
The only thing
that
I can
either.
think of is that I know the next section I'm going to read about is audiobooks, and I know audiobooks is really starting to come into its own. So that might be one aspect of it. And then there is also, I hear so many people say I would prefer to have a book in my hands.
Yes.
And I think the reason for that is that, it makes you stay focused on it.
True.
I don't know about you, but if I'm watching television, for instance, I can get sleepy real quick.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I got in the habit when I used to drive back and forth all the time between Los Angeles and Las Vegas, and nothing makes a trip go faster than listening to a good book.
Yeah.
But to your point, James, I find that if I'm reading a paperback book, I retain more of the information than if I was reading on a device or if I was listening to an audiobook. And, I generally have good recall, but I always have greater recall if I've read a print edition. And I don't, the brain must perceive it in a different way.
Well, I know when I write, I don't know how you write, Pat or Morgan, but when I write, I actually write freehand, and then I go put it in the computer. And it's for the same reason. I can focus better when I'm writing in freehand than I can if I'm writing everything on the computer. I know a lot of people are just the opposite. You're the opposite?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the last time I wrote a freehand manuscript was about 1998.
Yeah, I'm the same. I know.
Really?
I prefer to type it straight as the start of the book and just keep going, But research is the biggest problem. It takes so long to get the information right.
Yeah.
Because if you get something wrong, they'll let you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, the number of audiobooks published...
You're right about ebooks. I have a Kindle, and I can put up to 3,500 books on that to read.
Right.
Yeah.
So wherever we go, the Kindle goes with me.
Yeah.
and I just keep reading, and if you don't like the book, you just zap it, delete it, and get on to the next one.
Yeah. Well, I would like to say that when we get information off the internet, that doesn't always mean it's accurate. It's
True.
Because what I've noticed is that this information changes yearly. I mean, you're always getting new figures, so you never know.
Yeah.
Well, the number of audiobooks published in the U.S. increased dramatically in the last few years, going from 7,200 published titles in 2011 to more than 35,500 in 2015. Mainly in the self-help and spirituality audiobooks, and 35% of audiobook listeners in the United States that they prefer the audiobook genre. So kind of like what you said, maybe when you're traveling, you would prefer that because, like on a plane,
Well,
you could take it with you on a plane
well,
too.
on plane, I'd probably read a Kindle.
Okay.
But if I'm driving, then I'd rather have an audiobook. And let me add a little plug in here is that 2 of my books will be released in audiobook. Well, I actually have, 3 or 4 now that are in audiobook. But the last 2 Silver Sisters books, Vanishing Act in Vegas is due to come out by the end of the year, I believe, from Books in Motion. And then after that, they will be recording Diamonds in the Dumpster. So that will mean all 4 Silver Sisters books will be in audio then.
All right. Well, just so you know, 65% of all book readers that they did a survey on still prefer printed books. 65% in the U.S. Pat, do you know anything about Australia? Do people prefer audiobooks, ebooks, or printed books?
No, all I know, James, is that I know that a lot of people say to me, "Oh, have you got this book in print?" And now because I've always published on Amazon, but now I've published the books in book form, in printed form. I said, "Yeah, you can go to the website and purchase it from there." Whereas with the latest series, I'll put them into book form because I think that a lot of people want to read them and retain them.
Yeah.
And not only that, I order a couple for my family and all that every year, so it's quite good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think what gets me is I'm waiting for someone out there to create an app to turn the ebooks and all that and have your story told in a YouTube type of presentation. So there's action and all that. So I don't know who's going to do it, but there'll be someone out there working on it.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm getting ready to do a book. I created a trailer for my book.
Yeah, I've got trailers on some of mine.
Yeah.
I just want to add in one more figure that's interesting. On my book, Incest, Murder, and a Miracle, that is the story of Cheryl and Rob Cuccio and co-authored with them. The thing that I find interesting on my sales, is that they're almost 50-50 paperback and digital.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and my other books are heavily weighted toward digital.
Really?
But yeah, and I was very surprised because I thought that the digital sales would definitely outsell the paperback, based on what my other books have done.
Yeah.
And actually, in some cases, especially after they've been on TV, they'll sell more paperbacks via Amazon and the various sites than digital. So I don't know.
Yeah, well,
it's kind of a conundrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, all right.
But
I think
Go ahead,
marketing is the biggest key. Marketing your book is the biggest.
Yes.
Marketing yourself is the biggest key.
Yes.
The brand of that's the key, and that's why I stick with. I focus everybody on my website so they can sort of go there and then choose whatever they like. Then it's their choice.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing. No matter where we are in the world, you still have to market it.
Yes.
Because nobody's going to know where it is if you don't go out there and market it.
Right.
Otherwise.
Yeah. So it's definitely important. And I know, Morgan, I'm going to let you take this next one here.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about readers in the United States and what kind of formats they said they read books. And about 73% of the readers in the United States said they'll read books in any format. And the average American, let's say from the ages of 18 to 49, statistically they read about 12 books a year. And the average number of books read by 65 or older Americans is slightly higher. They read about 13 books a year, so an extra book. Well, maybe we have more leisure time, as we
I think
get older.
that's probably what it is.
But about 23% of the people who responded in a 2017 survey said they read print books and ebooks equally. And, maybe that's the answer to the thing that I was looking at.
Yeah.
And about 20% said they read more ebooks. Now, talking about the things that are the most popular, mystery, thriller, and crime are the leading book genres in the United States, as nearly half of American consumers prefer this genre. Oh, good that I write mysteries, right?
Yes, you do.
And about 33% of them stated history was their favorite book genre. There you go, Pat, on your historical fiction. And 31% of Americans said biographies and memoirs were their preferred type of book, and I've got a couple of those too, so we're in good shape here.
All right. And Pat, I'm going to let you take the next one.
Well, in a challenging market, more publishers saw sales increase in 2016, although total revenue of the world's 50 largest book publishers topped $50 billion in 2016.
Wow.
Last year was not an easy one for global publishing giants. Less than half of top 50 publishers posted revenue gains in 2016, with the balance reporting sales declines. One of the companies that had the toughest year was Pearson, which had 15% decline in sales to $5.62 billion. Even with the drop in revenue, Pearson continued its long-time reign as the world's largest book publisher.
Yeah, we actually talked about this on one of the shows.
Yeah, no pink slips yet, huh? Okay, so then let's look at the educational market, particularly in the United States. Sales were down in 2016 compared to 2015. And that meant declining sales for publishers. And actually, some of the publishing companies restructured. Pearson, the one that we've been referring to, underwent a company-wide reorganization in 2016. And they said that was in response to changes in the educational publishing market. Mm-hmm. The move eliminated, I was wrong when I said no pink slips. Because the move eliminated about 4,000 employees. Wow. And earlier this year, the educational publisher said it intended to cut about 3,000 more positions.
Wow.
Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, which was the 14th largest publisher in 2016, even they saw a 3% decline in revenue. And they announced this spring that it will eliminate between 8 and 10% of its workforce, 4,500, in 2017. Well, we're almost through 2017, so I don't know how many of those heads have hit the chopping block yet, but it's sad to see this happening to the publishing industry.
Right, and we talked about it on a show with Vicki Ann Bush. We were talking about how the top 5 publishers in the United States have all taken a tremendous hit. Some of them are down as much as 40% in sales. So one of the things I'm going to bring up here, which I found interesting, is there's a company out there. Is it Simon & Schuster? Mm-hmm. Yeah. They are owned by CBS, which is a television network here in the United States. And what's interesting is that I've noticed that almost every program now that's a talk format, whether it be the news or just like The Talk, which is a show on that network,
right,
they actually interview authors from Simon & Schuster. Of course, they own the network. So they're trying to find ways to get out there and market their authors now that's different than they've ever had to do in the past.
Right. Well, I have a question here, too, that just popped into this pea brain of mine. Do you suppose that some of this has to do with the tremendous escalation of self-publishing?
Yes. Yeah, and that's one of the trends that's happening right now is in the self-publishing market, the top 100 sales on ebooks last year, I think it was 56 of their top-selling authors out of 100 were self-published authors. So that tells you that there's a huge swing and how that it's all
Right,
affecting the publishing
right.
industry. And the other thing I found out yesterday when I was doing some research on these major publishing companies is this is how they're getting smart though, and it's good that they're doing this because they have to get on board with things. One of the things that they're doing, Morgan and Pat, is that they're actually they're acquiring the small to mid-sized publishers, the big traditional publishers. So what they're doing is they're looking at the market, they're seeing where the publishers are, how many authors they have, and what their sales volume is. And then when they see that there's something substantial there that they can latch onto, because now they have proven authors. So now they go and acquire those small companies to become part of their company.
That's interesting. Well, another thing that I remember reading about, God, it had to be about a year ago or more, is that some of the imprints have come out with a thinly veiled program that is actually like vanity publishing.
Okay.
And they call it assisted, but it's with the imprint of a big publisher, but you're paying for your stuff.
Well, Penguin does that too. They have like 13 entities out there.
Right.
Like Ex Libris or Author House.
Right, exactly.
And they're all owned by Penguin, but they don't say they're Penguin because they're a different subsidiary.
Yeah, but there are a couple that had, I don't remember which ones they were now, that actually had a program that they called Publisher Assisted or something like that. So the person could feel like they were with a
major
named
house.
publisher, but they were paying the same thing as if they were using a vanity press.
I wonder if that would help them when it comes to the marketing aspect.
I think the way they had it set up is that the people could buy marketing packages, just like you could with Ex Libris or one of those. But truthfully, when you look through a lot of those marketing packages, most of them are things you can do yourself.
But having the name attached of a major publisher, though, is what...
Well, that part, but then the marketing packages don't have the major... I mean, they might have that the book's published by blah, blah company.
Okay.
But as far as the materials, they're probably ones that you can either do yourself or find a lot cheaper.
Pat, are there a lot of subsidiary publishers there, small publishers in Australia or Vanity Press?
I'm not quite sure, James. I only deal with Smashwords and Amazon, so I sort of went through the. I'm a member of the Queensland Writers Centre, which, if you want to join publishers there, being a member, you can do that. But I don't go along that train because I like to make sure that I'm in control of what I do myself, and I find that through self-publishing that I have the ability to do that, and I sort of be able to do everything myself and then get a return at the end of the day. When I self-published before, or when I had the first book as a publisher, I wasn't getting much return for what I was doing, although we sold a lot of books. But I found that there was the middleman taking the lot, so that's when I decided to look at this. But when ebooks come in 2009, that was my saviour, because before I used to have to get my books printed, and then the cost of doing that, and then get on the road and sell them.
Sure.
And of course, you got to sell them for a lot more money than what the costs are. And people just didn't want to pay the exorbitant amount. But with ebooks, well, they pay $2.99 for them, and that's not much money. And I find that, and then I give all my storybooks away free, so which I find that gives the reader something for nothing. And then, like I do on Facebook, if someone's having a birthday, I give them a free book too.
Well, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, friends, they have a thing on Facebook called On This Day, and then you'll have a lot of people come up on the screen, and you'll give them a free book too, for their being loyal to you.
Well, we're getting
I do
close.
that as a marketing strategy.
We're getting close to running out of time, so we're not going to go by the rest of the script.
Oh, okay.
But I do want to touch on a couple things that are important here, because this is truly how the world market is today when it comes to working with each other as well. We had two authors on who had never met up until the day they were on this show.
Right.
And what they did is they communicated through email and texting. And they spent 7 years editing this book, and actually writing this book together. And then when they finally came to this show a few weeks ago, that was the first time they met face to face.
Yeah, well, Incest, Murder, and a Miracle. We did the entire thing, just about the entire thing, by email and telephone. And I never physically met Cheryl and Rob until I went to New York because I'd been contacted by Discovery ID to co-narrate a show on A Crime to Remember. And they lived in New York, so I called and I said, I'm going to be there. And we had most of the book written by the time I ever met them.
Yeah. So it is interesting how we're really all connected in this world now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, a very, very small world, as you
Yeah.
can tell by what we're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm sitting in the middle of nowhere in the other end of the world.
And I actually met up with you through a book club there in Australia.
Oh, did you? Is that how it
yeah,
came
that's
about?
how I got your name.
Oh, okay.
Or was it, or did you contact me? I know I went through the book club there. Yeah, you were a member of a book
you
club there.
contacted-
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how I contacted you. So
Oh,
they
I
suggested you.
appreciate that
Yeah,
very much.
yeah. So since we're running out of time, I'm going to do the last minute of the show here. And Pat, I would like to thank you. Pat Ritter has been our guest from Australia, and I would like to thank you so much, Pat. And hopefully we'll stay in touch here because I want to know every time you're doing something new. So,
Yeah, you've got some unique ideas. I like them.
So
Well,
Pat,
keep in touch, Morgan. I can tell you them all. I have no worries. No, it's wonderful. Thank you for this opportunity,
you're
James.
welcome. You're so
It's very
welcome.
good.
Yeah, it's been fun. And to get more information about Pat, you can go to www.patritter, and that's PATRITTER.com.au. Because he's in
right,
Australia, so you got to make sure and put that AU on
Right.
there. Or you can just go to Amazon.com and you'll find his books, Pat Ritter, and you look for The Drover. That's one that you'll definitely be able to pull up right away. And then for Morgan St. James, Morgan has her own website.
Right. It's www.Morgan St. James, and that's STJAMES-author.com. And all of my books are on Amazon and just about every online bookseller. So not too hard to remember Morgan St. James.
Well, and I also would like to add that once the show posts, for anyone who's interested in our authors, you can go to youtube.com and you'll see the video portion of the show on there. Just go to youtube.com/aspects of writing, all one word. There you also, if you go to aspectsofwriting.com, which is just aspectsofwriting.com, you'll find links in the middle of the page. Just go to the right and you'll see the links there for iHeartRadio. It'll be posted to iHeart, iTunes, Roku TV, and of course our parent distributor is amfm247.com, and you'll actually be able to listen to the show live there on AMFM, every Saturday now. That's our new time, Saturdays at 1. So, 1 Eastern Standard Time or Pacific Time. I'm not sure what it's going to be where you are because it's the next day, Pat.
Right. The easiest way I've found for us in Pacific Standard Time is go forward 1 day and back 5 hours, and then you've got it.
Okay. All right. Well, so until next week, this is your host, James Kelly, reminding you, if you can dream it, you can write it. Pat, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yes,
All right.
thank you, Pat.
Thank you, James and Morgan. Much appreciated.
All right. We'll stay in
Okay.
touch. Thank you.